Hello, everybody, and welcome to Podfluxxx, episode 60. I am Kevin Fulton. That is Ricky Reyes. Ricky, I want to get out on Front Street here and go ahead and apologize in advance. There is pandemonium occurring in my house. It is 4th of July weekend. My children are acting a fool. We were going to try and record last night, but there were active explosions going off in my neighborhood. Like everybody, there was like a professional fireworks show.
Oh, man.
3 houses on every street for like a mile around me. We sat in the driveway and we just watched shit blow up. And I imagine it was probably pretty awesome in Texas because I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that 4th of July is probably a pretty big deal in Texas. Mm-hmm. And with Texas being cooler than New York, the rules are probably way less restricted as far as fireworks go. So how was your 4th down there in Texas land?
Yeah, it was good. You know, it was hot, so the barbecuing started super early, hence the drinking for the people that do that stuff. So, yeah, they were really shooting them off all day. Like, you know, like around noon, I could hear stuff popping everywhere. And so, yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Did you have your drinking buddies over?
Yeah.
No Hernandez or
yeah.
Or Cholo.
Yeah, no.
So we're for anybody who missed last week, we're going to start conducting a deeper dive into your time at Lucha Underground and Lucha Underground as a whole. And so we got into the Conan situation last week, but now we're going to start with season 1. And we're going to hit kind of just like the high points on season 1. Before we really get there, I would like to lay a little groundwork here. So this is going to be me asking you a bunch of questions. And it's almost like all pertaining to like day 1. You know what I mean? So, I mean, there's matches and storylines and highlights that we can talk about, but there's not a lot of information out there on the actual Lucha Underground process. And you're a person who I think thinks in the similar vein that I do, that you kind of want to know about the goings on of the going on. You know what I mean? It's kind of, it's more, you know, wrestling is all fun and fine and dandy and all that stuff. But like the real interesting shit is in what makes it work. Right. And I think that's something, you know, because you can watch the shows and you can watch the matches, but to like know what it was about and what went into it and everything like that, I think is an interesting place to start. So you down?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. So I want to know, right? Like we spoke a little bit in the past about the initial plans for you at Lucha Underground. But for anybody who didn't see it, I think it would be this is probably a good time to maybe circle back and touch on that a little bit. Now, I believe you said that initially you were going to be, was it Son of Havoc?
Yeah.
Okay, so you show up there. All right, well, first of all, you step out of a car and you go inside this facility. Explain to us what that was actually like.
What you mean the first day arriving at the temple?
Yeah, you get there, you go into the temple, you're looking around. What's your initial thoughts? What are, you know, your first impression? What are the initial plans for you when you get there? And what do you know? Actually, let's start there. What do you know before you get there? How did this whole process begin?
Yeah, I was gonna say this the initial plan and my contact with like the writers and directors and stuff started months prior because uh, I found out about this, that this was 100% go in June. Uh, so like a little bit of like, so that's what I was going to do, is back up all the way to like the very beginning. And this goes back to my relationship with Conan, on how far back him and I were actually friends.
Right.
So I was trying to think too. This is 2014, so I mean, we were all firing on all cylinders at VPW pretty regularly, training and working out and hanging out. And so I don't know if I've told a lot of you guys this, or I don't know how much of this stuff that we've spoke about, even as it was happening. But it really starts like years back. When Rocky had jumped from CMLL to AAA with Alex Kozlov, and he started the Degeneration X, right? In Mexico with X-Pac. I was in contact with Conan, like pretty lengthy phone calls every couple months. Him and I would call him, I would email him, and he would say, "There's a lot going on. Let me give you a call," and we would talk pretty regularly, every couple of months. And he was trying, that's when he had like Jack Evans and Teddy Hart, when they were all in AAA, Angelico, when they were all kind of the junior cruiserweight guys, getting all the crazy publicity. Extreme Tiger, all those guys were like kind of on fire at that time. So I was trying to communicate with him as much as I could, because he was very interested in bringing me in. I think he had an idea of doing his version of LAX there. I think I'm just thinking, because he would throw out basically me, Homicide, and Low Key as like a 6-man faction, was his idea. The problem with that, some people may or may not know, is a little bit of Low Key's business. He's a little bit difficult to deal with when it comes to this stuff. Like, I was committed to move to Mexico to work there, and those guys, maybe just Low Key, I don't know their situation, but I know that they were not maybe as gun-ho on that as I was. Like, maybe they have done like some long tours or something, but I had lived in Mexico before with CMLL, so I was okay with venturing off to another company and just living there for however long it takes, right? So that's what I mean about Conan trying to play off like he doesn't know me at all, right? Like, we had like lengthy conversations about everybody, about Low Key, about Homicide, about myself, and I was pitching things like, what if it's just me, because I knew that I couldn't rely on those guys. We were all in, at different points of our lives, so I also knew from Low Key that that was around that time he was looking to go to WWE, and then with TNA and stuff was, so he was in a different boat than all three of us were in different boats, So I didn't want to rely on those guys. Plus, Low Key's leaving Ring of Honor and stuff like that kind of messed up plans for Homicide and I, along with like later Rocky leaving to move to Mexico, ironically. So it all kind of, like the Rottweiler thing, kind of all fell apart way quicker than it was supposed to. At least the game plan was for us to kind of run roughshod for a very long time, from what we understood. So with that being said, everything kind of all happened the first week of June. The reason why I remember that was because it was Becky's birthday, June 4th. And that's when she told me she was pregnant with Reyes. And so that was a Wednesday. And Friday night, I I had off, so I had told her we would go, like I think it was Texas Roadhouse or something, and we were just gonna have dinner and just talk about what this was gonna look like being parents, right? uh, at Texas Roadhouse, you usually figure out life, and then you just kind of go with that plan.
Yeah.
So we went to dinner, and I didn't bring my phone with me. And I remember when I got home, I had a number of calls from Conan, and so I called him back, and I said, hey, I said, what's up? And he's like, look, a guy named Mark something or other is going to call you Monday morning around 9 a.m. He's in LA, and you're on a short list. This is Conan telling me you are in a short list of names to use for our AAA in the United States television show on, it's called the El Rey Network. And I said, oh, and he was like, yeah, he goes, this is what we've been working for. This is what I've been telling you all these times we've talked. He kept telling me, when we come to the US, I'm going to use you, bro. I got you. Don't worry. You're my boy, this and that. Right. So, cause he doesn't remember me. Right. So I'm like listening to him, and I'm like, okay. I said, cool. And he asked me, is everything all right? And because I was kind of like trying to figure everything out that just got dumped in my lap in the past few days, right? So I said, yeah. I said, me and my wife were, we were out to dinner, and she had just told me she's pregnant, and he was like, oh, congratulations. I'm so happy. And it goes, it's good timing. Like, this could be huge for you, And I was like, yeah, I was just thinking all of this stuff, in my head. And so sure enough, that was a Friday night. So I was at the gym Monday, and I get a call, a California number. And there it was. This guy, Mark, calls. He says, hey, Carlos told me to give you a call. You're on the list.
Mark Burnett?
It's not Mark Burnett. It was a early on producer of the show, but from the Mark Burnett production company, basically. So he's like, hey, we want to see if you can come in for a reading, like a script reading. And I said, okay, like I can do that. I said, I fly out of Philadelphia. And he said, oh, you're not local. You're not in LA. You're not in LA, in Southern California. And I said, no. I said, I moved, to the East Coast years ago. And he said, oh, you're on the California list. And I said, well, I started there. Yeah. Wrestling. And I said, for years, I said, I got pretty popular. And then I said, I moved to the East Coast. And so he said, okay, well, we'll give you a call back. So I didn't know if that was like a deal breaker, right? Like right. The flight, right? Because everyone complains about that. So Conan had told me to let me know when they called me. So I texted him and I said, hey, those guys hit me up. They want me to come in for a reading, but they didn't know I lived in Philadelphia. And then he started with, oh yeah, bro, you might have to move back to California. And I said, well, that's a possibility, and I'm okay with that, but is this going to be a deal breaker? And he's like, I don't know. I know that they want guys, more local. And I said, all right, well, to me, it wasn't that big a deal, right? Because we had been speaking about AAA and USA for years now, so it never came true. So I even told Becky, I said, well, we'll see if this happens. It sounds good, but we'll see. So later on, I get an email from now this guy, Tony, who's like, does all our contracts. So he just sends me the contract. Like it went from, oh, we need you to do a reading, to the next day, Tuesday, it was, here's the deal, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, so I called him. He left his number and everything. And I said, yeah, I'm just following up. I said, they were talking about that. And he goes, no, don't fucking worry about that shit. Like you're in, this is it. He goes, did you read everything? And I'm like, yeah, sure I did. I didn't fucking read, I looked where the money was.
That was my question. You didn't have anybody look that shit over. And I mean, I know you personally. I know you don't have much patience for reading.
Right. There was enough pictures on that contract. Yeah.
You look for the zeros and the dollar sign and where to write your name.
That was the only thing I needed, because when Becky and I would talked about it, I gave her a number that I knew I couldn't go lower than. I said, if it's this amount, this is legit, because I know that they're not using me as the number one guy, so I'm just a guy, but it's a Hollywood production, this and that. So I kind of was stuck on this number. Well, that was the number they sent me, right? For 40 episodes the first year, up to 9 years. So there was like little things that, like, she read it over and was kind of telling me like what these things were and meant and everything. And I was like, okay. My next thing that I did that Tuesday was emailed Canyon Seaman from WWE, because so this is 2014, right? And there was nonstop talk about the Cruiserweight Classic that they didn't name it yet, but Regal had put me on a list there of another short list of names that was definitely coming in if and when this happened, right? So I emailed Canyon and I said, hey, there's this new group starting up. They signed you to a contract. I can't do anything with you guys anymore if I sign this. So he emailed me back, surprisingly, like right away. And he was telling me, he said, look, we want you. We can't take you right now. But if this cruiserweight thing kicks off, you're supposed to be in it. And I think it kicked off like 2 years later. 2016. So I said, so we're emailing back, and I emailed him. I said, my wife's pregnant. This is good money for me right now. I can't go on a possibility of if you're going to have this show. And I knew how Vince was with small guys, so it would be 2 or 3 year run, and then you'd more likely be done. So I was at least smart enough to know that. So I emailed Chris Daniels and I asked him what would he do if he was in this situation. And he was like, take the money with the new company, make a name for yourself, and make WWE come get you for more. So I said, okay. So Canyon emailed me back after that, and he said, look, keep in touch. When that deal expires, call me. And I said, okay. So we went to, I think it was my wife's family's house, or her parents, and then just to sign the contract and email it back or whatever, like from her sister's computer or something like that. So, and that was it. And then then by that next Wednesday morning, I had signed that deal and I was in there. So fast forward, now I'm seeing like reports come out, right? Of course, Meltzer and friends are talking about AAA USA. The only names that were attached to it were me and DJ Christopher DeJoseph, the head writer. So we were the only two kind of openly admitting to being a part of this. So of course you get everyone and their mother either texting you or DMing you that, what is this? Who you talk to, and so forth. So eventually DJ and I connected. He sent me an email and he was like, hey, wanted to run by some stuff. So that was June, mid to late July, I think. I started talking to DJ pretty regularly. He's like, got any questions? Got any, call me anytime, whatever. He goes, we are in this together. So I was like, all right. So he called me one day on with the other writers present. And they said, well, we had an idea for you. And one of the writers had seen me live in Connecticut at Ring of Honor. And he was like, well, we had a mask gimmick for you, but we just feel like your persona and everything, you don't need a mask and you're not that style of wrestler, right? And I said, no, I'm not. I said, I'm the guy that wrestles the mask guy. I said, I do the opposite of what they do. And he was like, yeah, right. Like, that's kind of what we were thinking and this and that. So they were like, well, we have this character and he's almost like a comedy gimmick, but we didn't think that would fit you. And I said, look, I'm not going to tell you guys what I want to do, what I don't want to do. But smart money is I'm the bad guy or one of them. And he was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, that's kind of what we were hoping. And they asked me, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to look like? What do you want to wrestle like? And so I gave him a little rundown of what I do. And then he vouched for me. He was like, yeah, he's really good, like intense, right? And I said, yeah. And I said, I always liked the look of like the cargo pants and the kickers. And I said, I kind of like the glove thing, like AJ's been doing it. And I just said, I think it looks good. It looks cool. And I said, I like that look. So DJ said, I want to see it. He goes, show it to me. And I said, okay, I'll email you pictures. Give me an hour. So I went to like Walmart and I went to like the baseball gloves section, and I grabbed some gloves, and then I went, got the cargo pants, and and I just gimmicked it all up, and put it on and sent it to him. He said, perfect, bring that. And I said, all right. And that was kind of it, like the start of it. So that's kind of how I got this character, I guess. Your microphone. Oh.
I remember when I switched heel in VPW, and we were, doing Podfluxxx together now, and you came in, you had those cargo pants on, tucked into the kick pads, and I was like, we're not doing tights anymore?
Yeah, I remember.
I was so excited. I was like, I'm doing this, and I bought the high boots and the cargo pants, and I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, dude, I was so stoked to be out of tights. So you never went there with the misconception that you were going to go there and be Ricky Reyes. You knew right from Jump Street you were not going to be Ricky Reyes. I mean, you were going to be Ricky Reyes, but you weren't going to be called Ricky Reyes.
Yeah, so the other thing they did was they sent names. Like after I showed them the gear, the next talk was about names. Mm-hmm. And they kind of had their heart set on Cortez Castro already. So they sent me like a list of names that they thought was cool. Like one of them was like King, because of my name, is Reyes. And then like Leo or like a lion or something. Like they just sent you like a whole bunch of names, but they kind of had, here's what we were thinking. And I was like, that's fine. Like I kind of liked it because technically Ricky Reyes is from Cuba. So the Castro thing I liked. And then the Cortez thing I also liked. So it wasn't a huge deal, but it was like a
super familiar with having two last names.
Yeah. Almost like I knew what was going on. So yeah, I didn't mind. Yeah, but yeah, that was like the next conversation I had with them, really. And then after that, I didn't know what I was doing. Like that was it,
So you've got no, they weren't like, hey, here's our script. I mean, if they're kind of still workshopping who's going to be what character, obviously the from point A to point Z for season 1 is still pretty open-ended.
Yeah, so from what I understand, they were still casting up until the week we got there. So they were still kind of sending out, because a lot of people were not replying back. I think they wanted Shelton Benjamin.
Right.
There was talks of like, guys that DJ had good relationships with, he was reaching out to in a big way, especially like the last couple of weeks, because we weren't like fully staffed. And then Phoenix, Pentagon, and Drago, Phantasma, a bunch of AAA guys, visas didn't come through. And so they missed the first week of TV, because the original first main event was supposed to be Prince Puma against Phoenix. And that was supposed to be, and instead it
ended up being Morrison
and Phoenix, correct. And then that's why they did the triple threat. I think the third week was Pentagon, Phoenix, and Drago in a triple threat. And it was like Conan's setup for that was like, you want the best wrestlers in the world? Well, I'll bring them for you next week, you know, and it was kind of like a build, and then we let them go nuts.
So this was July, right? Around July, you said this conversation was happening.
Yes.
Now, you went out in September. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of months goes by. Is there still constant contact back and forth? Or like a little bit of radio silence, and then one day you get an email with your flight?
From what I can remember, like, there wasn't a whole lot. I mean, I kind of knew what I was at least going to look like, and it was up to me to kind of just figure out what I wanted to do. Like, you know, I kind of have tunnel vision. I mean, like, you know, but people have to understand I have tunnel vision. So I get something, and then I try to look as far deep into it as possible, right? And then as a character wise, I'm trying to explore all different avenues of what this could really look like, what I want to do, how I want to be presented on television. Because let's face it, they can, you know, your script or whatever you're saying in these vignettes is one thing, right? But when the bell rings, that's where we as wrestlers make our money, right? So how I wanted this character to look is kind of like I made small tweaks to my wrestling style where I wanted to do less spots. I wanted to do less spots for me because let's face it, I'm going to be in there with Lucha guys. I know the drill, right? How do I get over with doing nothing? Basically, you know, was how I wanted to tweak it. So brawling, fighting, you know, grabbing motherfuckers and just throwing them, how I look, how I walk, all these things is how I started to kind of make small tweaks with, and then wrestling every week, you know, I'm already hard at work on this, you know, so I didn't really need any other connections, and I didn't need anything else. The paper was signed. I'm getting, you know, this is happening, you know, so I'm already in work mode, you know. So not too much communication. Every now and again, I think me and DJ would like, hey, how you holding up? How's everything going? And it was the same back, right? I'm good. How you feeling? You know, and I'm like, I'm getting in shape. I'm ready. You know, anything you need from me? No. So it was a lot of that, you know, really.
Do you have kind of like the mindset to try to be in contact often because you know the wrestling business and how the wrestling business is, and you know, something that is here today, no matter what you signed, could be not a thing
Right.
3 weeks from now. You know what I mean? So we're kind of like, were you weary to see this actually come to fruition?
A little bit, yeah, of course. I mean, again, going back to the multiple talks I've had with Conan, you know, he kept telling me that this was going to happen, you know. If anything, I was more contact with Conan during this time than I was with DJ, because Conan was, I don't know if he was paranoid or what, but he would ask, hey, did they ask you to move yet? And we hadn't even shot anything. And I was like, no, because I remember specifically being in upstate New York for NWA Upstate, and he texted me and emailed me, hey, we need to talk. And I'm like, all right. And this is like a few weeks before we were supposed to go to shoot like the first show. So I'm like on the phone with them outside. Brody Lee was there. You know, the typical upstate guys, you know, like I remember talking to him about it, like me and Brody Lee just like bullshitting. He's like, what is it? What is it about? And I was like, oh, I just talked to Conan. And he's like, oh, that's so cool, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah. And he was just like, all right, bro, like just remember, like, you know, just do your stuff and do it good. And, you know, like I needed some rah-rah speech, you know. And I was like, all right, like I'm fine, like I'll figure it out, you know. But yeah, he would ask me pretty regularly, did they talk to you about moving to California? So I'm like, I don't know if did he want a roommate or something? I was like, I don't know, you know, like I was like, no, not really. I mean, I have family there. I said, so worst case scenario, I could just stay there for a while and not have to have a hotel. I said, so I could just, get me to where my parents are and I could just stay at home. So he was like, all right. He's like, and that was about all I did. I had more contact with him in that time than I was with DJ until we met, and then we started to work. Then it was only when I saw Conan there, and then I was in contact with DJ regularly for a while, for the first like 3 years, pretty steadily.
All right. So we fly out. You get there, I'm assuming the day before, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You get into a hotel. Any familiar faces or anybody else staying? Is the whole crew in this hotel? You run into anybody, or you walk through the door, you go right to your room because you're Ricky Reyes, and that's some Ricky Reyes shit to do. All right, I'm going to go sit in my room and stare at my phone.
That's exactly what I did. So I don't know.
For the rest of this, I'll just say what I'm pretty sure you did, and you can either just nod yes or no. I'm pretty sure I know exactly how all this works.
I can remember that day too. That's exactly what I did.
You ordered something with no cheese on it to eat. You found the gym.
Yeah.
Dollar store, gallon of water.
That's it.
Yep.
So yeah, you get in the day before. So because of the time change or whatever, it's I land there at like 9:30 a.m. So they pick me up. I go to the hotel. They drop me off. My buddy Brian, who I'm still friends with today, he's a show like he runs like the production crews in Hollywood. Now, I mean, at the time he was just a runner, but now he's like a shot caller there that hires crews, runs them. So
runner.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So he picks me up. We start talking. He's a big wrestling fan, so we hit it off. He takes me to the hotel and says, "Okay, this lady Liz, she's an office person. She's gonna drop your per diem by." So of course, not reading the contract, I didn't know I was getting per diem per day, right?
Right.
So I'm like, "Oh, per diem? I don't even know what the fuck that means," So I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I go upstairs, I call Becky, and I'm like, "I get per diem?" And then she goes, "Oh yeah, I think I saw that. It's like $50 a day." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "Cool. All right." So I'm upstairs, I walk down, I do that run, I get my water, I go down to the fitness room at the hotel to see if it's a gym or not, which it is, because it's a 5-star Hilton Checkers downtown LA, Right. So they were shooting movies across the street like multiple times throughout the years, we were there. So it's one of those places in LA. So I go down, check out the gym. I'm like, okay, cool. So I do a little workout, whatever. I go back upstairs, order some food because now I'm rich. So I'm like, yeah, I'll get hotel room service, right?
$50 now.
Yeah, right. I'd have to spend my own money. I'm like, okay. So I order a $45 Angus beef burger with some fries because I'm like, oh yeah, no cheese. So Liz shows up. She's the girl in Chavo Guerrero's song that goes, "Ooh, Chavo, dun dun dun." That's her. Yeah. So she was in WWE for a long time. Yes. So that's what she did. She did like travel, I guess, for them. So they hired her, of course, with DJ, hired her on. So she shows up. She's like, "Hey, here's your per diem, blah blah blah." She goes, "Everyone else is here," because I was downstairs, right? And she goes, "Everyone is upstairs at the pool." And I was like, "All right, cool." Yeah. So she starts listing off people that are here, right? And I'm just like, "All right," like a handful of people, not everybody, So I'm like, "Okay." I take the envelope and I just walk back
inside now.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll go back upstairs and I'm watching All Japan on my phone, you know. So that's what I did. And then I wasn't like nervous. I had heard uh I guess the internet leaked out like Vampiro was there, so I was kind of like, oh shit, I haven't seen Vampiro in forever. And then Striker was there, which I didn't know until that day too, you know. And I was like, shit, I was like, I would have went to the gym with him, or you know, got food or something. So no big deal. So um, I'm not like nervous, but I'm excited, right? Like it's a kind of like it's so new, right? Like
Yeah.
this
Anxious.
is this is what we're gonna make it, right? I mean, we didn't know at the time, but I took it as I'm gonna make the most of it. You know, I remember one thing too. Like I'll say, like I remember, like so you would have to go back in time yourself and kind of know like what kind of Ricky Reyes you were dealing with then, right? Arrogant, an asshole, mean, um, you know, like nothing could hurt me, you know, I was going to hurt everybody else type mentality, right? So now you crank that up a little bit more because I have a child on the way. This is for me, this is going to be good money, you know. Um, I remember signing the contract, you know, and right before I sent it off, I like looked at Becky and I just kind of smiled and she goes, I'm so grateful for this, you know. And I said, they need to be grateful that they have me. And then I pushed send because I was going to, whatever this was going to be, I was going to make sure that I left my mark on it
Yep.
because I had already, you know, traveled, you know, felt like I failed in places, you know, I didn't get my recognition that I felt I deserved and so forth, you know. So I remember when I did that, I thought, whatever this is, even if it's just this 40 episodes, I'm gonna make the most of this shit. You know, like nobody was gonna tell me anymore. I couldn't do anything. And these were things I remember telling you guys to do during practice, like you know, guys individual, you know, all you guys individually coming to me with, oh, you know, like I'm gonna work here. What do you think I should do? I remember when Vinny was like, oh, I'm going to EC or CZW. Like, what should I do? And I'm like, just do your shit and do it. You know, they can't do what you can do. You know, like he didn't understand that yet. You know, so I remember thinking like, yeah, man, like I'm gonna do all that stuff. You know, like they're about to fuck around and find out. Basically, you know, they felt overlooked and overshadowed in big ways. I thought it was unfair that Conan acted like he couldn't bring me to Mexico unless I had Homicide and Low Key with me. And I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, those guys respect me, you know what I mean? The same way I respect them. Like, we're all on the same level, you know? But in people's eyes, you know, in other people's eyes, right? I was not on that level yet, you know, maybe just number of eyeballs, you know, away. But for me, skill wise, you know, you have to remember like what we were doing every night, right? Was like, did we even feel pain? No. Like, you know, like we just were doing it so much and so often and so like the worst fights we were in were the pro wrestling matches with each other. You know what I mean? Right? I mean, we were doing things because we were on a mission. You know, that's how I felt at least. So I was pretty excited, and then Monday, you know, I think it was Saturday morning. Yeah, we get up and we're supposed to be in the lobby at 8 a.m. So I get down there around 7:45, whatever, and I'm just hanging out, and then I just start seeing Matt Cross, and I'm like, oh shit, you know, Ricochet. I'm like, oh man, like, you know, so I mean, these are name guys, right? And everybody knows everybody or knows of everybody, right? But we don't know we're not friends. We don't know each other, right?
Right.
So I did my typical, just sat in a corner, you know, and just was kind of figuring out who was cool and who wasn't. So Ricochet and M Dog, like Matt Cross, you know, they're good friends. So they're kind of chumming it up, and they came over, talked to me for a little bit, and then I just, you know, was my usual quiet self. And then,
Until you figure out which pack of idiots to gravitate to.
right, yeah. So like, and then like, you know, then Ricky Banderas and, you know, Blue Demon, all those like, you know, all those guys come down. So I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So we get in the van. The building is 10 minutes away. So the building itself, the part that people see on television, is a small corner of this building. It's like literally the corner, right? So outside the corner is the TV truck, which is a huge fucking truck. And then beyond that is like catering is outside in a big tent and everything. So the corner.
Is this a sound stage or is it a warehouse, a theater? What is it?
It is a giant warehouse where there's multiple rooms the size of the temple in different places. Like it's huge.
Like an airplane hangar.
Yes, and it's like outside. It's like rocks, like no parking. It's just like a big dirt, road. It's in a bad part of L.A. and Boyle Heights is a rougher area, but the building itself.
Yeah, legit. One of my next questions was going to be: is Boyle Heights a real place?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
now I know.
Yeah, it's like there's like this big like bridge, like overpass over like you would see in movies where kids would skateboard where there's water and and they would skateboard and there's tagging everywhere. Like that was where we were. It was
Terminator?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it looked like. Like we were right next to
water runoff. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, like they may have shot that there, but this whole the whole building, it looks like it's run down, like there's nothing in it. And then you walk into it, and it's like we had the gym right when you walked in. There was a gym, there was a practice ring, and then right across was the temple itself with all the seating, the ring, everything. Then there was outside, but to the left was like where they made Pentagon's like dojo, and then they had a VIP room beyond that where like fans that had VIP tickets would go in, and there was like a bar, a food bar, and then like they were showing past Lucha Underground shows. I mean, later on, obviously, like it was all made up to be so like fans, VIP fans can go sit, or family or executives that were in town or whatever, they would go hang out in there like in between tapings. So this place was huge. It was giant. And then we kind of walk in and we see posters for the first time, Lucha Underground with the logo. So we've never seen this, right? So up until that day, we didn't know what this was.
Is there any truth to? I've heard, we're doing a little research. I've read and I've heard that at first it was going to be called Lucha Uprising. Was that a thing? Something you're aware of, or?
I remember hearing that, yeah, or reading that, yeah. There was a number of names, like Conan referred to it as AAA USA, or USA Lucha Libre, and so I don't know, maybe they had different ideas, but when we got there, the first day was when we saw Lucha Underground, the actual, logo and everything,
Now, it's the first day. You guys all get there. You get inside. You're seeing all this shit for the first time, and then what happens? They're a meeting.
Yeah.
They run through what you guys are going to be doing from point A to point Z, or.
Yeah. So first thing we all do, we all go up. So they have there's people already there working, because the offices are actually in there, like our Lucha Underground offices. So Liz is upstairs in her office. Tony has an office. Eric has an office. The big stars like Del Rio and them would eventually like dress in some offices like up there, who they're more private or whatever. But so we go upstairs, and then they say, look, there's catering for you guys. We'll have breakfast. We'll be here every morning. We have a meeting at 9 a.m. It was always meeting at 9 a.m. because the writers and producers would go to meeting at 10 a.m. And then from 10 to 10:30, they'd be in that meeting, and then it was time to go to work. So we have a meeting. We're downstairs where the fans sit, like right where the tunnel is, where you walk out, where the big tunnel. So we're all sitting right there. Eric, DJ, Tony, all the hot shots from El Rey are all standing in front of the ring.
Was Robert Rodriguez ever there?
Yeah, he was there a bunch of times.
That's dope.
Yeah. His band played at one of the half times a couple times. So it was cool to see him up there like jamming and stuff. But yeah, he produced. So there's a scene where Johnny Mundo beats up me and Cholo like in a hallway. He directed that.
Really, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like he's really chill.
Well, you know what? He's one of like my favorite, and he's one of the most legit directors out there.
Yeah.
I mean, El Mariachi, Desperado, From Dusk Till Dawn.
Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
Once Upon a Time in Mexico.
That's one right there, yeah.
Machete, Sin City.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, one of my absolute favorite. I love those El Mariachi movies, and then Once Upon a Time in Mexico is a goddamn classic.
That's the best, yeah.
Oh, so good when they design. Yeah. Anyway, so so they have their meetings, and then it's down to business. Now, you guys walk through what you were gonna do, or how did the meeting with the actual talent go?
So the first meeting was just basically an introduction, who's who does what in the office. And then DJ got up there and said, okay, he's spoken to, at this point we have 13 wrestlers. That's it. That's all we have because of the guys that missed due to visas. And then they still hadn't signed in or locked in multiple people that they had been talking to. So he says, I kind of ran by everybody's character stuff and whatever, and he goes, so we're going to lay out what we're going to do right now with the producers. So the producers, or agents, whatever you want to call them, was like Chavo, MVP, Paul London. I think that's all we had at the time. And then Conan, Vampiro was there, and then Stryker, but they were off to the side because they were commentator or producers, so just talent was sitting right in front of everybody. So they went through, everybody who's is available for help, basically. So then they break off and they're like, they want us to be comfortable. If we're not comfortable doing something, they want to know. We're not forced to do anything. If they feel that tweaks with the script don't fit your character, DJ wanted to know. He was like, I'm not writing this shit for me. I'm not writing it, for anybody but you yourself, can talk to me at any time. So he had an open door policy, which was necessary at that time. And then that was it. So basically right after that, I went, got dressed, and then went into the gym. A couple of the other guys we were all just working out, and then right next to it was a practice ring. So guys, we basically migrated over there. So they went and had their meeting. Then Chavo comes over and he kind of starts, Chavo and Paul London, whatever, MVP, all these guys come over and they have the paperwork in their hand and they're just kind of walking to you and say, all right, here's what you're going to do tonight. So now we're finding out we're shooting 2 shows each day. So, and then they have dark matches prior to the shows, each show. So we're getting the run.
Dark matches for, was it basically sound check and shit?
Yes, that's what dark matches are. Like cameras, run tests, sound,
shot.
Yes. Just getting the truck kind of like in sync. And then for like Jeff Cobb, when he came in later in season 1, it was to just for DJ to kind of watch and let some ideas flow. That was his way of like seeing who looked good with who looked good doing what. So that's what I kind of learned from him, kind of picking his brain always, was like, what do you see when you see this, and he's like, well, and then he would break down more from the creative side. Right. So like I always tell people, like, I'm not good at creative, like creating it. Right. I'm good when you give it to me to make it better. You know what I mean? So I'm not good at creating. So I'm fascinated with like what he saw, you know, and how he saw things, you know, because it was like from a completely different perspective than mine, right? Like I see Jeff Cobb and I'm like, okay, let's go along though. I see when Jeff Cobb came in, I saw what he is now in New Japan, you know,
Right.
I saw, but he saw a monster, you know what I mean? Again, creative, right? Like he's going in off to a whole nother direction. So I forgot what I was saying, but so that's what eventually happened. And then we were told at the very end of the first episode that that's when we were coming in to just beat up Morrison. But at that time, at the time of the meeting, Morrison wasn't there. So Cholo, being the mark that he was, I say that jokingly, of course. He's like, "Oh, I heard John Morrison's coming," and at the time, I didn't care for him very much, you know. So I was like, "Man, fuck him if he shows up here." And sure enough, he's here. And guess who I'm interacting with on the first fucking episode is his dumbass. So he comes in. So while we're working out and everybody's in the ring, he just kind of comes strolling in, you know. So a couple of, you know, like MVP and all of them go up to him, say hi, you know, and I'm like, oh, they're sucking each other off. And then I'm like, whatever. So he walks up to me, he's like, hey man, how's it going? And I'm like, cool. And I just like shake his hand and walk away. And then later, of course, Chavo's like, okay, so you guys are gonna wreak havoc at the end of the main event. And I'm like, oh, we don't have a match? And he's like, no, this is setting up an angle to get you guys going. So he tells us what we're doing. We're basically beating the shit out of both top baby faces, leaving them laying, right? So now we're the top heels in the promotion, right? So I'm like, what? Like, this is crazy, right? So I'm super excited. So we have to go through like the entire show. Everyone's, you know, doing great. You know, everyone's popping everything, you know, virgin crowd. So they don't know what this is. And you got Blue Demon getting hit in the head with the chair by Chavo, you know, all this crazy, like, what the fuck's happening? Like, Chavo's turned. And so it's cool. And then, of course, Matt Cross is out there doing these amazing things. And I'm like, what the fuck, you know? And then Morrison and Ricochet go like almost 30 minutes. And I'm like, oh, man, like, what the fuck, you know? And then so we're set up to do the run-in. So we're coming in from the side. And I'll never forget this. The match is going on, so we're there for the start of the match, and we're just kind of hiding. We got hoodies on and hiding. And I look over to Cholo, and I'm like, this will be good. And he's like, man, I'm nervous. And I'm like, it's all right, bro. I said, once you get in the ring, you know, it's business as usual, you know. And he goes, no, I've never been a heel before. And I'm like, what? Yeah, I did that look. Like, while we're waiting, like, he could have ran this by me earlier. You know, we've been here since 8 a.m., bitch. Like, say something, you know? So I'm like, you've never been a heel? At this point, he's been wrestling as long as I have, like 16 years. And he's like, no, I'm always a babyface, bro. He goes,
that's a Ricky Steamboat babyface run right there.
Right. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, bro, I like selling merch. And I'm like, bro, I said, okay. I said, don't do a lot of stuff. It's just a beatdown. I said, just look good doing it. Look like we're really hurting these guys. I said, you know, in my mind, I'm like, I can't deal with this shit right now. So I tell them, copy what I'm doing. Like imitate my facials, like, for now. So we run out, you know, boom, 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 do the deal. We get the table out, you know, and then luckily we had Ezekiel Jackson, Big Rick.
Big Rick.
Yeah. So he tells us, he's like, listen, we get that table out. Let's give it a minute. Let them know that shit's about to go down. And then boom, we give it to him. And I'm like, all right, cool. So he's got the TV timing down, you know. And then I said, then what do we do? And he goes, we just stand there and look at everyone's body, like, you know. And I said, okay, cool. So we go out, boom, boom, boom. We set it up, bam, angle's done, you know. So we come to the back, everyone's like, oh, it's fucking awesome, you know. So now we have, you know, set the table for what was going to be that tag match the next day.
Now, you guys collectively were known as the Crew, right? And on that episode, was it just you, Cholo, and Big Rick?
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, just because I've been waiting on this teaser since last week. All right? When did you get B-Boy?
Okay, so again, going back to the dark matches, we teamed up like the next taping in a dark match because B-Boy was there. He didn't do anything like the first weekend. Maybe he did some darks. I don't know, because we were a surprise, so they didn't want us on darks or anything. They didn't want the crowd to even see us. So I think maybe now that I think about it, he did do a dark and nobody liked it, right?
Wait, so they saw him wrestle first and then gave him a job?
Correct. Well, he was already signed on. He was already there. He was already
okay.
Now it's a matter of using him in the right capacity.
What is the right capacity?
What's that?
What is the right capacity?
When we killed him in Matanza's cage was the right capacity. That's a whole story in itself, that whole thing. Anyways, so I think the next day or 2 days or a couple tapings later, they had us oddly, like just randomly in a 6-man against maybe local guys even, you know. So it was limited. And, you know, I think after that tag match, which was the next day, me and Cholo against Ricochet and Morrison. I remember somebody had mentioned that Conan was hyping it up as this right here is what it's going to look like. Like these are the guys right here that's going to make this go, you know. Again, because Conan doesn't know me, you know, he's already calling me the ace of Lucha Underground. Right. You know, he and a couple of the producers were like, "Oh yeah, I heard, you know, Morrison's good." And I remember, I think it was Stryker or somebody told me, like, Conan was like, "Nah, man, all 4 of these guys, like, this is what it's about right here." So we went out there and just had basically a tag match, right? And then and that was kind of it, where I think DJ realized, well, I know Morrison did because him and I had a little talk after the match, but DJ realized, okay, like Cholo and Reyes, he could see that we're the workers, right? Like we were the working guys of the match, like the mid to upper card heel guys that you needed to get the next guy over. I think that's what we were slated as, you know, like the Dolph Zigglers or Chavo Guerreros, whatever, Kane, whatever. Arn Anderson, correct. Yeah, like we were gonna make this shit make sense. So and that was a big deal for all of us, that match, at least for me and Cholo, because that was for us like a little coming out party, you know, for us.
All right. So my last question on this topic for tonight, because we're about an hour in, so I think we're in a pretty good place to stop off and then pick up next week. But the fans. Now, you mentioned that it was like an email,
yeah,
like, you know, Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon or whatever.
Yeah.
But these are wrestling fans, yes?
Honestly, I think most of them were, because I heard the first weekend, I heard multiple Ricky Reyes, like, right. You know, so there wasn't as many as it ended up being, obviously, for a number of reasons, but the crowd was lively, at least. Yeah. So it was whoever wanted to be a part of that. Yeah.
So, but I mean, like, if you are a fan of the Jimmy Fallon show, you're going to put yourself on a list to try and get tickets for the Jimmy Fallon show, right? Yep. Saturday Night Live, same thing. Mm-hmm. This is something that you're being, okay, it's pro wrestling, so you might be a pro wrestling fan, but something that has never been seen before, where do you find an audience for And then as performers, like I know every time you go to a new indie, right? It's always like, oh, gotta feel the crowd out, see what the crowd likes, whatever. And it's always like, the first night is always rough if you're not somebody like you whose reputation, precedes them, and the fans, if they're real indie wrestling fans, are going to know who you are before you walk through the door. But if you're, John Schmo, who, started wrestling 6 months ago, you walk in someplace for the first time and it's like, shit, like I got to make these people react. What was it like with the crowd there that you don't even know what kind of wrestling fans they are, if at all, to try and get these people to do something on literal day one of Lucha Underground?
Yeah, that was tough because there was things that would happen that if it happened at a PWG crowd, they'd have lost their minds, right?
Right.
And then this crowd is like, ooh, like their reactions is not a pop as much as it's a damn, like that looked like it hurt almost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's one of those. So it was tough. I mean, it wasn't what it became, right? Obviously.
Well, after it
But
got following, and you can, after season one, you guys shot you guys did it in halves, right?
yes.
So, see, part of season one had aired before you shot season two. So, the second half of season one, I'm saying, right?
Oh, so we did the halves for season 3.
Okay.
But the first, and there's a story behind why that happened too. But season 1 and 2, so we shot season 1 up until November, and then they released it, I think, in October.
Mm-hmm.
The first episode, I think that's how it went.
See, but you had an opportunity with the later seasons to have people coming into that building who have been watching it, right? So
yes,
they're there for it now.
Yes, season 2, the start of season 2, I do a dark match, and I have a story about that. The crowd, like, that was when I was like, I do know what the fuck I'm talking about. Like, there's a moment that I created in that dark match, where everybody looked at me like, holy shit, he was right. Like, but yes, the later episodes started gaining traction a little bit. Or later seasons, I should say. So it was much easier to get those wrestling reactions. But yes, the first weekend was like weird. Like I remember DJ calling me and say, "How did you like it?" And I remember thinking, well, I had a blast during the match, and I said, "There's so much potential. Like this could really be something." And he was like, "Yeah, it just doesn't look all that great on TV." And then I told him, I was like, "Yeah, I know." And he was like, "But we'll get him. We'll get him." And I remember thinking like, "Yeah, we will," because I was in the locker room. I know like what these guys are capable of, So, yeah, that first weekend was odd. We had a couple of mishaps with the floor director guy. He would stop something like a promo, and then he would like, "No, we got to retake that." And then he would get on the mic and be like, "Okay, guys, we need you to be quiet." And I'm like, some of these are wrestling fans. They don't give a fuck what you say, bro. Like this is we're live, baby. Like we're live, pal. Like we're live, pal, because they're here and they don't give a shit. They don't know or care about you one bit. Like, and then so they eventually, I don't know if he left or what, but I remember we didn't see that guy after like the second or third taping. And you could tell he didn't like it. Like it was like a game show. Maybe he's a game show guy or something. He was like, "All right, we're gonna retake that." Boo! Fuck your mom.
Yeah.
You guys need to stop. You guys need to stop. Suck a dick, faggot. Okay, everyone's got to be quiet. Everyone's got to be quiet. And I'm like, yeah, you're not getting it, bro. Like you can't do that shit here. Like if we need to do a retake, it needs to be done all from start. And let it end
tomorrow.
And then tomorrow, correct, which we did a couple times, because they thought it was more like, all right, all right, whoop, whoop. And I'm like, nah, bro. Like, and then the more wrestling fans they became, forget it. Like, they were telling us when the show started and ended.
That's an interesting dynamic that I haven't even thought about that I'd like to get into as we do this.
Mm-hmm.
Of the TV people kind of having to learn that they're doing wrestling,
Correct.
and the wrestling people having to learn that they're doing TV.
That in a nutshell is the Lucha Underground story.
Well, I'm excited to keep going on that, but we're gonna stop right now. This was a lot of fun, super interesting. I can't wait to keep doing this, and that's all I gotta say. What about you?
Yeah, no, I'm excited. It brings up a lot of memories and stuff, and like thinking about doing this now, like this whole week, I've been like going back to that year, trying to think, and then thinking about where we were with VPW, because like I was kind of living between those two worlds, because those were the only things that really jazzed me up and got me going anymore, and yeah, just thinking about all our dumbass nonsense. And
I remember, quick before we wrap up, while you were doing tapings and we were having VPW shows, I was getting to do the promos, and I was calling you Hollywood Ricky Reyes. And there was one show that you were coming back for, and we were tagging, and I did one of my favorite lines I ever did in a promo, right? And Rachel actually had like friends that she works with there, and people were appalled at what I said in this promo. So I'm building up my tag team partner, and I was like, my tag team partner for next month has more stamps in his passport than you people get a month to feed your families. And the place was just like, and it was Center Reach. And we had the nuclear heat, and they were ready to come over the guardrail. They were losing it. And I'm looking at JD, and JD's like,
keep going.
so it was a lot of fun for us to try to get to steer that ship.
Yeah.
You weren't there, and it was super, super fun for me because, like, right when you started doing this, I did the heel turn when I blew my knee out.
Yeah.
So that whole, like, the whole first year of it, I was getting to get over as a heel without having the ability to wrestle.
To work, right?
So it was all mic work. And yeah. I remember at the time, Johnny Five was like, I don't think you can be a heel. And I was like, okay. You got no idea, pal, but I'm a piece of shit. Right. Give me a microphone and I'm going to show you.
All right. You can surround me with other pieces of shit. We'll be just fine.
Yeah. Give me the guy in orange and the bald Cuban. Let's fucking do this.
Oh man, I can't wait to do VPW days.
Oh dude, I saw JD last weekend at Kono, his promotion, Remarkable Wrestling, built indie wrestling's first elimination chamber. And I had to see it with my own eyes, right? And apparently JD had the same thought because I got there and he was there. And Radio was there because they had two rings set up, one for like the matches and then the one with the chamber.
Oh.
And then I get there and I go to Radio. I go, did David wrestle yet? Because David wrestles there. It's where he's doing some training. And they were like, yeah, Casey Navarro couldn't make it, so David's taking his spot in the chamber. And I was like, exactly, that's the face I made. And I looked at Radio. I said, you were like, thumbs up, go ahead. So, and Matt Tremont's in this match. So David goes down. Tremont gets released out of his pod. The thing actually looked good, but he spears this other kid through the pod into the cage. The cage bows in half, and luckily their crew got in there and band-aided it up pretty well. But David takes something and he sells, and I'm looking around and I'm seeing Tremont, and he's got the fork out and shit, and I just start screaming, "David, stay down! Stay down!" But all in all, the thing came off pretty. It was pretty cool. The cage was the first one eliminated. But anyway,
Yeah.
I digress. We're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna pick this up next week. It's a little bit more of kind of the production side of it, and then I want to start getting into the roster and who's there and stuff like that, and hit the high points from season 1.
Yeah, we iron out a lot of the production stuff by mid season 1, because that's when we were like finding better people for this, or they were just jumping on board with, okay, it's better if we do it this way, because the wrestling audience is its own animal that you have to understand how to control. So that played a lot into it.
Well, I can't wait to talk about it. All right, Rick, Mother Fluxers, this has been Podfluxxx, episode 60. Thanks for watching, and always remember, Podfluxxx, the best kind of bad.